I'm going to talk about data commons today. So data commons is data collected from all over the planet from any number of sources, and it gives you a better understanding of what goes on the planet based on anything from economics, demographics, health, so on and so forth, as you can see. This is all something where it's all in one spot, and you can actually build all sorts of interesting information. And then let's say you have a business and you're looking forward to getting some data on whether it be crime or weather in an area where you're going to be working. This would be coming in handy. Let's just go ahead and take a look. For instance, what I've done here is I chose agriculture, and I asked it to go to ownership status. And then from there, I decided I'm going to ask it of the United States and divide it by the states. So we'll have each state represented. And I'm just going to choose the default latest date. And then we'll go by the ethnicity of the ownership of each farm. And so what happens when you kind of delve in and you've searched this out and said, okay, this is what I want. You hit preview, and it gives you this handy-dandy data. Well, the thing is, it's like a CSV file. So what can you do with it? Well, I mean, you can open it in let's say, different kind of graphing things or Excel, or you could possibly open it in Numbers for Macintosh. But what you're going to be dealing with, coincidentally, is it downloaded this. Now, what is this? This is the data. This is how they organize it. It's a CSV file. Now, let me go ahead and explain how these work. The very first line on a CSV file is going to be like your categories. So, for instance, when you're working on an Excel sheet, it's the top of all your stuff. And that's how you get the organization columns. And then it's from there on out, that specific design model, your data model, is going to be set up like that. So the first thing listed will be exactly what it told you would be in the first column. It's confusing. It looks like a lot of data. Let me tell you a little bit more about how this can work out for you in JavaScript. So what I've done is I've taken the first line and I spliced it up based on commas. So if you really look at it, when you're looking at this, I'm just looking at the first line here. Just this guy. Okay? Now, I took it and I divvied it up based on commas. And then I also numbered it, because these are our column numbers now, based on what I just told you. And as you watch, now each line will follow that column. So as you can see, 0 and 1 will be the place ID and the name, and therefore you can see that. And then from here on out, it starts handing out information, and this is just the next line. This is line 2. This is this line. So that kind of gives you an understanding of their data model. They give you the data model and what they're going to be calling everything variable-wise, and then they start hunting down and pounding out data. Okay, so how are we going to build, something with all this turn into something visual? So here are our data points for each ethnicity, and here's our categories from state. This is how we're going to do it. I'm going to basically import a CSV file, as you can see here. I'll just import it. I'll just hit refresh. Let's see here. So let's go ahead and say I'm going to import this, and there's my file. And as you can see, I've got a couple things down here. I said, list me all the categories so that I understand what I'm dealing with. I need to make sure that each of these is represented here with the same amount of numbers. Now remember, everything starts with 0. So yes, there are 50 states. However, since it starts with 0, we're going to say 49. And I got to be honest with you, all of them have to equal the same amount in length. Otherwise, it won't make any sense because there won't be any data points for that category for whoever. So if they don't have any information, you got to make sure to put like a 0 instead. And a lot of times I'm going to have to show you some instances that are going to come up when dealing with CSVs and JavaScript. So what did I do? Okay, so basically this is me just grabbing my CSV file. This is something very easy protocol to understand. And then from there, I submit it. I take it, and I'm saying, hey, this is going to be read as a certain file, UTF-8, and we're going to turn it into basically kind of like a big blob of data, I guess you could say. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and I'm going to call out a function called build objects. Build objects is up here. It's going to take that information I passed to it. And like I said, the first thing you want to do when it comes to working with CSV files is remember CSV files are divided by lines. So here in this JavaScript split /n, I'm going to make an array out of each line. Therefore, however many lines there are, that's how many items I have in the array. Now, we know how many there are. There's 50, so we can just keep it real here. Just type it in. If it goes over 50, the problem is with CSV files is the very last entry is a comma, which will basically destroy what you're up to. So it'll fire off all the things you want correctly within your object, and then the very last entry is a comma. So make sure you slice that off however you want to do it. I personally know how long my list is going to be, so I'm slicing it off by writing the actual number 50. However, if it's not going to be that easy for you, you don't know how long this thing's going to be, you do know that the last thing's going to be a comma. So whatever the length is, slice off the last one or it'll destroy your application. It will be like, hey, this isn't a number. I don't know what this is. It's a comma with nothing else. So this data is inappropriate and boom, broken. So as you can see, as these things get split up with our JavaScript, the split will ultimately make that problem. So let's move on. What exactly am I going to be doing here? So first off, I want to show you, here's the build chart. Now this is all good. I'm going to show you it here in a second. I'll turn this over here to explain to you how to walk through this data. Now, first and foremost, let me see here. Yeah. We know where everything is in the line. So we know that this is the ID of the location. This is always going to be the state. And they have it divvied up by ethnicity in this design. So we know, as we saw here, that within the lines we were slicing up, the first three after the place name and ID is the white ethnicity. And then as you keep slicing on that line, the next section of data will be our next category of Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. And the next set of data on that line that we'll be splicing and splitting up is Hispanic, so on and so forth. So in one line, they've got all this information per state. Okay. That means that everything's numbered. So as I run through a for loop here, I know exactly what's going on. And say, as I run through this, I just want you to pump out specific things. Now, granted, this won't be necessary here for our graph, but I do want to show you how this could work if you just wanted to build an object. So let's just take a quick look. As you can see, I'm going to grab my file like I asked, I'm going to grab it here, hit open, and then I'm going to import it. And it does all my stuff. Watch this. I've also asked it to save this information, as you can see, in local storage under agriculture, which I spelled wrong. Maybe, I don't know. Whatever. So now here's my data. Now I can go off and do whatever I want with it. You see what it's done? It's done everything it wanted. Alaska, and it did it all by state. So I've ultimately built an object that I can go on and just have fun with. But that's not what I wanted to do, coincidentally for this graph. What I wanted to do, and so we can ultimately take that part out. Yeah, I just wanted to show you that. Yeah, what I wanted to do is just build this chart. And everybody's pretty familiar, if I'm not mistaken, from all my other classes, with Apex Charts. And we are using just generic JavaScript this time. We're not using React or anything. So explore demos. And we're using bar charts. We're using this one. So yeah, they're just kind of giving you an example here. So this would be where our states are. And as you see fit, you'll have all our categories based on race here. And you can add on to this. They just don't have a lot of data here, but what I've done in my JavaScript is as I go through, first off, I want to make sure it's a number. Because if it's not a number, we got major problems. Then I push the number and make sure it's a number. So parse int, ideally I would do that. Now, granted, if it didn't follow through with any of these conditional statements, it's a bunk. It's not a real number, so we got to replace it, and we'll replace it with a 0. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing here. Now the states just get pushed all the way through, and what do I do when I say I'm going to build chart? So as you can see, this is just the console log of what all the data looks like. That way do I have data? And then it confirms that you do. So basically what I did was, as this came through, I was like, these are all my categories and these are all my states. I'm just going to be pushing into these objects, into these arrays right up here. I'm sorry. And then once that's all done, I'm going to bring in, here's my data. And here's what kind of chart I'm using and how high it's allowed to be. The height is 2,500. And from here, I'm just telling it a little bit about some of the details I want it to look like. And then this is saying I'm going to go ahead and start this chart off. And that's pretty much it. So, what does this end up looking like? Yeah, you'll see. I mean, it's granted, a lot of times it's mainly like especially when you look at Texas, this is insane, the amount of farmers they have in Texas. So we're getting close to 400,000 ownership. But being that some of these are so small in number compared to how big some of the under the numbers are, it's interesting. Like, they barely even register because there's just so many people in this agriculture. But as you can see, this is how you go using your data commons, and you can start looking for employment and business, and you can talk about the industry, and from here you start talking about transportation, and you can start talking wages, and there you go. And we just go into town, and then you start downloading what you want, and then you can build whatever you'd like. So let's say you're writing a hypothetical thesis on something. You can get data from here to prove your point. If you want to kind of find a little bit more about a topic you're trying to study, and you're just kind of curious as to where this is going to all come from, I recommend checking out Data Commons. It's something I think that Google put together, and that's a game changer when it comes to data. And the amount of information you can just get without really knowing where to start. You can just play around with it. And then in my opinion, like if you want a good JavaScript, kind of project, this will keep you sharp. Things that understand real-time applications, like so the bank gave you a CSV file or Data Commons gave you a CSV file. How do you take that file and turn it into something useful? Well, you break it down. You break down the first line, and then you say this is how they designed it, and then you expect that's how it's going to be designed the rest of the way. And then you either build out arrays or an object. And then from there, you're off and running with JavaScript. So I hope you learned something here, and I hope you have fun.